Peace. Damn. Happy now. Now is the vibrate. I wasn't gonna sing it. Not too far in the future. Not too far in the past. Right now. Right now I wanna speak on the Devic kingdom, you know what I'm saying? Devic kingdom dealing with the divas, the fairies, the elementals, nature guides, ancestors, the Twa people. But I want to speak a little bit on our relationship with them, a little bit of the history or story of fairies, and a little bit of getting into the hierarchy of them. But basically, you have the Devic kingdom, which is like the nature spirits in essence, and in essence, you got different aspects to it. Like you got the divas. The divas, in essence, the Deva or the Deva, is Sanskrit for being of brilliant light. But you got the divas or devas, however you want to say it. You got fairies. The fairies are related to the elves with strong magical personas. As a matter of fact, they are protectors and guides for people who deal with magic. You know what I'm saying? Peter Pan. You know what I'm saying? He dealt with the magic, so that's why he had the fairy with him. You know what I'm saying? In essence, like as that guidance and that protection, you know what I'm saying, of dealing with his magic or whatever. But that you got your fairies. And matter of fact, like speaking of fairy tales, that's where you get your fairy tales from. Is all these stories about the elementals and the Devic kingdom and things of this nature. That's how you get fairy tales. You know what I'm saying? And stories of these, basically like honestly like real stories of these beings in the different dimensions that they deal with. You know what I'm saying? Because now I'm getting to the point again where I'm letting people know like this is real. Like these dimensions and things of this nature is real. No matter how much you cannot fathom it, or it's hard for you to fathom it. These dimensions exist. These beings exist. And matter of fact, and the story that I'm gonna end up getting into later, you start to realize like the truth in stories once you come across the same information, but in different people's stories. Like so, if I heard the same story in essence from 10 different people, but all different 10, like even though they had like differences in their story, they all resonated with one point of information. It's like, all right, that information must be a fact. If this person that speaks this language said it, this person that speaks a whole nother language said it too, and like then it has some type of correlation with each other. But again, that's where you get fairy tales from, the fairies, related to magic. Matter of fact, I got Xena. I'm feeling like Xena may be my fairy. Xena is my imaginary friend. Matter of fact, she's standing right here. Y'all say hi to her. But Xena is like my, which I end up manifesting making Xena, but she's like my imaginary friend, or like my fairy. Matter of fact, Xena actually kind of looks like Kali Ma. She got 4 arms, and she. All right, I'm not gonna talk about you while you're right here in your face. Cool, but that's my fairy in essence, my friend that deal with the magic. That's who I get down with. And then you also have the elementals. The elementals are kind of like basically what they do is they transform energies from nature and our higher selves into the physical body. As a matter of fact, they also help with self-healing because they are very familiar and connected to the DNA and atomic structure. Matter of fact, speaking of the elementals, also elementals are the least evolved forms in the Devic kingdom. So, say for instance, how these fairies and divas, matter of fact, they even got a hierarchy of fairies or elementals that's called Elohim, but the elementals are basically almost just that, like the elementals, like it's close to like it's like fire, water, and earth. It's almost like the consciousness of the fire, consciousness of the earth, and not necessarily a full life form, manifested as like a human being looking type of thing. It's like more of a thought form, more of a consciousness, you know what I'm saying? That's out there compared to like an actual, being. But again, the elementals transfer energies from nature and our higher selves into the physical body, and I always talk about like how certain crystals help to assimilate high vibrations, which basically mean taking those high vibrations and transferring it into the body and making this and translating it into some type of light that our DNA could read and work with and overstand, you know what I'm saying? So you see how the elementals, matter of fact, is tied to like working with petrified wood, and matter of fact, you see the correlations with all these different things, you know. But the crystal that connects you to nature, and which I just did a few of which lately, because I've been dealing with the ancestors and the Twa people. I've been dealing with the petrified wood in nature, so a lot of my videos been dealing with this a lot lately. But the petrified wood bring you closer to nature. Matter of fact, if you live in a city, things of this nature, you know what I'm saying? You want to have petrified wood with you, because that helps bring you closer to nature. It helps connect you with the elementals. It also helps you to connect with the ancestors and help you to get certain information out of your DNA. So it's no coincidence that the elementals help to transform energies from nature and our higher selves into the physical body, and also dealing with self-healing, which that's what dealing with the DNA, and bringing things in, also deals with that. But I need to stop saying but after and getting into the next thing too, where basically like the Devic kingdom parallels humanity. And I talked about how the Devic kingdom is one of the closer realms to Earth, that you could really attain. That's why all these cartoons, matter of fact, Land of the Lost, things of this nature, where they just went into a cave or went into a rabbit hole, and the next thing you know, they're in a whole different little world, but it's right there, parallel to the world of Earth. And matter of fact, most of those cartoons and shows from back in the day, like they could hop back and forth, like it just crawled through the wall and they back, on the Earth realm, or they crawl back into, kind of like the Narnia idea, like where you go into the closet and there's a whole different, world. Well, and that's why these fairy tales, you know what I'm saying, are depicted in that manner, and you could start to see the truth in all of it, when you see these parallels all in different stories adding up. But again, the Devic kingdom is parallel to humanity. So also with that being said, they do have like a hierarchy in essence to their kingdom. So say for instance, you have like fairies, where the queen fairy, the queen of fairies would be like a 4 foot, 5 foot being. And as I'm saying this too, in their realms, you know what I'm saying, they actually like, just more of the consciousness, beings. Now, say if I was to go into that Devic kingdom, what I'm picking up as a person is just the way my, brain or my consciousness translate the light or that consciousness or that information. It translated into a being like a female that's 4 foot tall. It ain't, what I'm saying, like it's the intelligence of that consciousness, again, being assimilated into my thoughts as a woman or a being, what I'm saying, of a human stature, in order for us, because it is off our perception. So in order for us to interact, we perceive it in a manner that's something like us, what I'm saying, in order to. And then in some cases you could say these beings are like well, how can I say, where they do have the makeup or the physical makeup of looking like a human in essence, even without us looking at them. Some, but for the most part, some of them take on that manifestation, so we could be comfortable with dealing with them in essence. But again, the queen fairy would be like 4 foot or 5 feet tall. Then a basic elemental, like like a small elemental, would be like a half a foot tall. You know what I'm saying? Something small and minute. And again, the elementals again are the least evolved forms. So it may, like if it's a real strong elemental as far as like strength of the thought form and consciousness of it, it may be possible for it to kind of take shape of as a human figure in your mind. But for the most part, it's more of just the consciousness of a certain element, things of that nature. And also their size in essence is based off of the level of wisdom, you know what I'm saying? Because say for instance, the queen of fairies, she done attained a knowledge, of different things, knowing about different trees, plants, animals, and also like with the hierarchy as well, you have like the lower, and I say lower like they lower, you know what I'm saying? But the the beings with less wisdom, in essence, are beings that are lower in the hierarchy, just on the level of that, and I can't use another word. They may deal with a certain particular tree or something. Like you might have an elemental that deals with the redwood tree, and that's all they know is everything about the redwood tree. You know what I'm saying? Like they could have other trees in the forest and everything, but they don't really, they don't deal with the particulars on all the trees, just the redwood. But matter of fact, the information I've come across lately, I've been told that that now in these days, because matter of fact, I'm gonna get into our relationship too with the Devic Kingdom and how it changed, especially recently. But now they're able to attain knowledge on all levels and be able to help with knowledge on all levels. So that's a good thing. And you also have the Elohim of the mineral kingdom. Uh, in essence, it's like like matter of fact, the L, almost like a L, like the angle of light, or extension of light or source. But the Elohim of mineral kingdom, uh, which is over. They got like a Elohim of each element or each of the seven rays of creation, and the Elohim would be like a big being. If you had to personify it into a human stature, it would be like at least 100 foot tall being. You know what I'm saying? Because that's the thing too. You see, the bigger the level of wisdom, but also the level of energy would also increase the size of the being also. And then other than the Elohim, so Elohim would be like the heads of certain, kingdoms, certain things. And I give an example, but not dealing with Elohim, but dealing with the divas. But you have divas that or devas that deal with different aspects. You got three different types. You got a sub diva, general diva, and a master diva. So say for instance, the sub diva, if I want to deal with quartz, they got the sub divas would deal with quartz only in California. You know what I'm saying? So if I was trying to connect with the energy of quartz in California, I would deal with that sub diva that deal with that. Then you got a general diva. That would be a diva or like an elemental being that deals with the quartz in the whole entire United States or in the whole entire North America. You know what I'm saying? And then on the third level, you would have a master diva, which would deal with quartz all over the world. You know what I'm saying? With that being would be one with the quartz. And matter of fact, and the hierarchy would trickle down. Like if it needed some information about the quartz in California, hey, such and such diva, like what's going, like that's how the hierarchy works in that sense. Matter of fact, and what's real about that? Before I even got this information, as I was getting ready to do my shaman retreat, it came upon me to ask particularly to connect with the devas or the elementals within this area of California. So like as I came across the information, I'm like, all right, it has to have some truth to it. If I intuitively felt the need to like act like I was like, all the divas and elementals of California and of this area, of the mountains in this area, you know what I'm saying? Because that's the thing, you want to deal with the particulars. Kind of like when you go places and you got to deal with the people of the community, like, in order to get wherever else you got to go, you know what I'm saying? But that's the thing, like I had to get the graces from the beings in this general area instead of just like all the Devic Kingdom all around the world and all over. It's like, nah, I'm dealing with the being in the mountains in California, so I need to contact the Devic Kingdom or the divas that's in that area. You know what I'm saying? And kind of like I was basically like reaching out to them for blessings. You know what I'm saying? So that I could, go in the woods and have my, like my retreat in essence, like have it peacefully and be protected. And also divas reflect our thoughts and our feelings. So basically, the state of humanity is in correlation with the state of the Devic Kingdom, vice versa. You know what I'm saying? But like you got certain areas where the mind frame of the people is of a lower vibration, and that trickles down into the Devic Kingdom. You know what I'm saying? And then the relationship kind of continues. You know what I'm saying? In that manner. But the divas basically reflect our thoughts and feelings directly, and that's why things have have gotten to a falling place in some places, or generally because the Devic Kingdom correlates with humanity. So once we started going crazy and started messing up Earth, that started messing with the divas and the elementals and their consciousness in essence, or their emotional well-being, so to speak. And now I'm gonna get into, the basically like the story of the divas in essence, or the story of the elementals, and how certain little myths and stories all tie into it. Now, one thing I found interesting, which I get back to it, but the Devic beings were once enslaved and abused by us. You know what I'm saying? Matter of fact, the direct correlation, in essence, like dealing with one of the direct correlations with a story is like Aladdin and the genie, where like, or the jinn. You know what I'm saying? Where Aladdin had the little jinn, you know what I'm saying, rub the bottle, and then the genie kind of worked for him. And two, you remember Aladdin? If you ever watched it, what was one of the things he wanted to do for his genie? He wanted to make his genie free. You know what I'm saying? Like, that was the thing. And you see the personification of, dealing with the fairies and the Devic kingdom. Is like, like, we had the relationship of being controlling, but then he eventually gave his genie freedom. You know what I'm saying? If y'all familiar with the Disney version of Aladdin. But this also correlates, so the Devic beings being once enslaved and abused, this is also correlation to the time of Atlantis, dealing with Atlantis, because the devils, or the Devic kingdom, was also around in that, during that time. And matter of fact, that's, in essence, you could say that vibration is what occupied Atlantis. And what I want to get into with some of you, if you're not familiar with spirit science, you should definitely check it out. It's a video, some videos speaking on like all this spiritual nature. Matter of fact, it's kind of the videos that woke me up. I watched in 2012, actually. That's 2012, 2013, something like that. But spirit science has the story of Atlantis, and it speaks on how, you had Atlantis with it had the grids. Matter of fact, like how Earth has chakras, you had a grid system on Atlantis. And matter of fact, you had a part that was considered to be like the head, you know what I'm saying, of, like, it's like an island right above Atlantis. And it's kind of like if you drew the tree of life, it would be like the head Sephiroth, you know. But basically, you had these Atlanteans, in Atlantis. And matter of fact, too, and to draw the correlation, divas are receptive and passive, which mean, they have like a feminine energy to them. So basically, since the divas, have that receptive and passive, feminine energy, you could see them as the Atlanteans in the spirit science story. And you could see the Martians, the left-brained Martians, is the vibration of the ego. You know what I'm saying? That came in and took control over the Atlanteans. Because too, they was talking about the correlation of the relationship where the Atlanteans were the vibration of a feminine, the feminine energy, but also like age-wise, like a 14-year-old woman, and the Martians was like a 7-year-old man. You know what I'm saying? And that's how that, that old energy, you know what I'm saying, of that, that male like energy, you know what I'm saying, overpowered that younger feminine energy, you know what I'm saying. But basically, it's a personification of our egos, you know what I'm saying, coming in and messing things up. And also in that story, they talk about how, when those Martians gained in power, you know what I'm saying, because at first they were outnumbered by the Atlanteans. But then once they got their numbers up, then they started ruling, and it was back and forth. Matter of fact, the way they personified the relationship, it was like like the Martians, or the ego, or that male left brain was like the older man in the relationship, and the Atlanteans was like the younger female in the relationship that just had to do what the husband say, and just had to listen in essence. But you see the correlation in the Atlanteans with the divas, or the Devic kingdom, you know. Because I also see like how the Martians are basically like a personification of when us as humans got into our ego, when we got away from our left brain, away from our, our right brain, feminine, spiritual side, and start bringing in that right brain essence. It brought us into that mode of controlling the divas, or, controlling the like the jinn, or the genie, you know what I'm saying, these beings. We eventually enslaved them because we developed that fearful left brain mind frame control. Let me hold it, you know what I'm saying. And also too, somewhat of a, and also we entrap the divas, but we also use them in wars and stuff like that too. And you see a personification of that in the Bhagavad Gita or the Mahabharata and the Vedas, in that story, basically like it was a battle, and you see like the energy of the jinns and the fairy or the divas, what I'm saying, going back and forth fighting that war. But also, some of y'all may not be familiar with this anime cartoon, but the Magi, Kingdom of, it's either Kingdom of Magi, but it's on Netflix. So if you have Netflix, it's an anime series called the Magi, and they got like the Labyrinth or the Kingdom of the Magi. I forgot the little subtitles, but even on there, like they show like where they got like vessels, like say for instance where they have to go into some type of cave and stuff and try to attain their jinn or their fairy, and then they have it like in a little vessel. You know what I'm saying? But like on Magi, it's kind of a balance in their relationship. Like, well, even though they may have like the diva in a vessel, you know what I'm saying? When that diva or that elemental or that jinn come out, it still has that mind frame of like, like you don't, how I say, like you don't control me like that, like like I only will cooperate as much as you show strength and respect in order to operate on this level, you know what I'm saying? But again, the Magi, that cartoon is a personification of, like having the genies or the jinn enslaved and using them at our own expense, and especially for war, because that's, another personification that I see a lot, like is dealing with controlling the divas or the elementals and using them for war, and that's another thing that messed up our relationship with them. And also you could see as a personification of a Pokemon also, you know what I'm saying, having a little mystical being in the ball, and you just make them go out there and fight Pokemon, you know what I'm saying, use your magical energy to fight this. Hey Pikachu, shock that tree and get that fruit down, you know what I'm saying, you could see where the ego like mundane stuff, lack of spiritual connection with the actions you're asking for, things of this nature. But again, that story correlates with Aladdin, uh, the Magi anime series, Pokemon, the Bhagavad Gita and Mahabharata, dealing with the Hindu texts and the Vedas, with going to war and using the elementals, dealing with that. But you start to see where all of it starts to correlate. As a matter of fact, on another level too, so dealing with fairy crosses, say for instance too, another little story. Like if you look up the story about fairy crosses and where they come from, they're gonna say they were the tears of the fairies, you know what I'm saying? But they say they were the tears of the fairies, and it was the fairies was crying because they just find out that Christ died. And I bust out laughing like, bruh. And you start to see how people still be trying to indirectly throw information in there. Now, I can't say this much, but it gets to a point too where even if it's out of ignorance, it's like, nah, you just still not, it's just coming off as not righteous enough. Like you could have did some more research. But basically, the fairy tears. So, all right, in the story of Atlantis, as the Martians or our ego, that left brain come in and controlling things, they started playing with things and they messed up the earth chakras or that tree of life energy vortex, you know what I'm saying, basically. Like they messed up the vortex and they made the energy, basically just threw off the earth chakras in essence. And matter of fact, these energy grids, basically were like a Christ consciousness grid, you know. So like those energy grids all over Earth, in essence, was considered like Christ consciousness grids in order to bring higher vibrations into the physical realm. You know what I'm saying? But it also is Earth chakras in essence too. But they're Christ conscious grids. So when these Christ conscious grids broke down, like in the story of Atlantis, when the Martians, or the left-brained ego, of humanity, messed up the Christ consciousness grids, that made the fairies cry, little starlight tears, you know. So in that story, the real truth to that, and I'm telling you for sure, Like, cause for sure it ain't no, they can't cry over somebody who didn't exist. Point blank, period. You know what I'm saying? So, with that being said, if you can't cry over somebody that didn't exist, but the Christ consciousness does exist, and they did have Christ consciousness grids that were on Atlantis, and if Atlanteans are tied to being fairies and divas, then you could see that that story is really about the Atlanteans slash the Devic kingdom crying over the earth grid, the earth chakras or the Christ consciousness grid being thrown off, you know, and not know because of this fake human being dying or whatever. It has nothing to do with that, you know. And also, on another level, which I didn't stay on it when I briefed on magic, but dealing with fairies and with magic, that's why too, when you start to get into magic, you see where it's about being more earthbound, where you got to deal with earth energies a little bit more, because that's how things manifest first. So say, for instance, your thoughts, things you're affirming in your brain, you know what I'm saying, they're out there in the astral planes, in essence, you know what I'm saying, it's out there in those high vibrational dimensions where these divas, fairies, and elementals can see that and use their powers, where, say, for instance, they have that power to connect with Earth closely, like I say, more than any other beings. And two, I always bring up, you contact your ancestors. In fact, the Twa people ancestors are fairies dealing with physical work on Earth, because they're close to this realm, and because they done dealt with this realm before, and been working with it. But what I was gonna say is that's why working with elementals is so important to magic, because that's where the manifestation comes from, is dealing with their energies. First you put out the affirmation, or first you put out the energy that of whatever it is you're trying to manifest, and then those elementals is what bring it forth into the physical. And matter of fact, so that's why when you have a great relationship with the Devic kingdom and with the ancestors, it makes it easier for you to manifest things on a physical level, because they help bring those energies into a physical, into a manifestation on a physical level. But that's why it's so important. Like, matter of fact, well, dealing with stones like jet, and jet deal with the elementals, dealing with magic, you know what I'm saying? Malachite, magic elementals, you know what I'm saying? Like all these different crystals associated with magic also indirectly will be associated with the Devic kingdom, because the elementals is how you manifest things. And again, elementals, fairies, divas, the Elohim, that's all different branches, all different, different types of beings in the Devic kingdom. But that's basically, how we work with them, and the basic story of, so the divas in essence is like the Atlanteans, you know what I'm saying? They were free, you know, manifesting, having fun, this and that, until, a matter of fact, and free and interacting with us, because we not trying to control them, so we all just free and, right brain and feminine energy, until, out of nowhere, and say, for instance, you could see that Martian energy also, or like the Martians from that story, they say, for instance, maybe at a certain point in time, Mars went retrograde on a level that was just so powerful that it just, bam, it came down and influenced our thought process, because as what zodiac signs, all that exists is like when you're born, certain stars had influence on your vibration, the way you're going to operate in this world. So maybe they had some type of, and they do talk about the Martians bringing up like an artificial Merkaba field, and messing up the energy. So maybe, it was like Mars at that time was in some type of retrograde, or giving off so much energy to where it ended up making us develop an ego. And in that moment, we end up like, well, let me, like taking control of the divas, and instead of letting them be free and us working with them, we controlled them, and, and had them working for us instead of with us, you know what I'm saying? But, and now though, in these times, matter of fact, the divas are back, and matter of fact, they're back free, and now they're able to work a little more freely with almost any types of energy dealing in nature. So how I talked about how certain elementals or certain beings deal with only certain types of things. Now, what you still have some like with a hierarchy, how I talk about how you got the sub divas, general divas, and master divas, where one deal with the quartz in California, the other one deal with the quartz in USA, the other one deal with the quartz all over the world. But in essence, more and more of them are being able to tap into all kind of information and bring forth all kind of information, to us. But you start to see how all these stories about these beings correlate with each other, and see how where all these fairy tales come from, and how they all correlate. So you see where you get Pokemon and the Magi and all these different things like Aladdin, and the Jinn. Matter of fact, I spoke on a with that anime called. They had an anime called Ajin. You know what I'm saying? With basically, but it was a different aspect to it. It's basically like a human that was like a demigod and couldn't die, and they had like a separate little, like I say, a jinn or a part of them, their spirit that would separate itself from their physical body that they could kind of control in essence. So again, back to controlling a jinn. You know what I'm saying? It's like we was controlling these jinns. You know what I'm saying? And harming them in essence, and that's what took away our relationship with them too. Like, cause we had a stronger relationship with the Devic kingdom, but after our ego got in there and started controlling, and it started messing it up. You know what I'm saying? And messed up our relationship in essence. But that's basically it. Where you could just see the parallels of the Atlantis story, the Lemurians, things of this nature, where it was like, in essence, a personification, or if not, the Devic kingdom, you know what I'm saying, the divas are, and matter of fact, in our vibration or our beings, before ego, you know what I'm saying, and before all the super physicality got into the situation, But once the ego and the physical being came in, that's when the fall came. Because even talk about that on Spirit Science, when about like when the Martians came, like how the evolution of knowledge kind of reached a little point and kind of dwindled down. And two, they talked about how the Martians brought in all their left brain technologies and things of this nature, which in essence, after so long, threw off the Atlanteans, and they developed the left brain in essence. Or like how I told you again, you see how this all correlate, how the information all correlate, because the Devic kingdom runs in parallel to humanity. So when we started, getting egotistical and messing up, that trickled down into their kingdom and their vibration also. But again, that's basically it. And you want to work with your petrified wood. I got a video on dealing with the Devic kingdom, but just because I got a few out, but you. Petrified wood, honestly, petrified wood and ferric crosses, and you can't go wrong. Like those two crystals, there's more crystals, and I'm gonna do the identification card for the other video, the older video I did, but cause you got green aventurine, green fuchsite, green jade, there's a bunch of different stones. As a matter of fact, for dealing with the ancient vibration of the Devic kingdom, you want to work with Numite and Shungite. You want to have Numite and Shungite along with the other Devic kingdom crystals. You know what I'm saying? Also, so that I bring you in more into some ancient, real ancient knowledge. Matter of fact, pulling out that information out of the DNA, which the elementals help to do, which petrified wood help to do, and which is no coincidence that that's what both of them do. You know what I'm saying? It's connecting you. In fact, the ancestors, the Devikin, that's our people. You know what I'm saying? The Twa people is the physical people that's alive right now on, physically, that are a direct connection to those ancestors. But right now is the time. Connect with the ancestors, with the different beings, the fairies, the elementals, the divas, the high ups, the Elohim of the mineral kingdoms and things of this nature. You know what I'm saying? Like, and two, as above, so below is a hierarchy all over, because the higher beings got to answer to higher beings. A never-ending fractal. You know what I'm saying? So But that's basically it. Just make sure you're giving thanks to the Devic Kingdom, to the ancestors. Working with them. Get you some stones. Go out into nature. You know what I'm saying? Connect a little more and allow that mind to be quiet. Cause again, and then you start to see again, like on a spiritual level, where all correlation. So no matter what you're dealing with in spirituality, what is always talking about letting go of ego, or is a story about how ego fucked everything up. You know what I'm saying? But some way or form or fashion, your left brain, male logic, ego is not a connection to spirit, and for the most part in the history of spirituality, the physicality and everything, in the history of everything, the ego always messing shit up, you know what I'm saying? And it's always disconnecting you from your spirit. Even on a DMT trip, bam, even it's personified in all forms of spirituality that your ego is what separates you from your true nature, or separates you from nature, or the netters, you know what I'm saying? Like how you got the meta netter dealing with the Egyptian texts and things of this nature. Things of this nature. That's probably why I use that phrase a lot. Because I just like saying the word nature. But again, you know what I'm saying? That you can start to see the correlations all around. And it's like then it gets to a point where you got to trust your intuition. Well, like at that point, if you see that all adding up, now it's not time to still be, well, let me ask so and so if this is really real. Like, nah, use your own intuition. These facts beating you in the face, then it must have some realness to it. And then the more you meditate and ask for the truth, and become one with your intuition, the less you should question these things, and the less you should feel the need to question this information once you come across and things of this nature. Because even with me doing this, some of the non-specifics were channeled, but like some of the specifics, like a fairy about 4 foot, 5 foot tall, yeah, like I like glossed the web for a little bit of information on different little sites, and even then, like on different sites, so accumulation of information that was being pointed out to me from my spirit guides, or my fairy brethren and sister, you know what I'm saying, the elementals, in fact, partner Zena. Zena a little shy, don't worry about it. It's probably why you can't see it. But peace. Happy now. Now is the vibrate. Not going too far in the future. Not going too far in the past. Right now. Peace.